Welcome to Soul Care, a time to cultivate hope in an otherwise dark time. Truly, we live in a broken time. Since 1 year ago, we have been facing the reality of racial injustice in our society, in our nation. First, in the death of George Floyd and the realization of the number of African American killed in our cities. Then, in the results of this pandemic and the numbers that we've looked at, for example, that a large percent of the COVID cases have been Hispanic people due to their jobs, which don't allow them to shelter in place, or due to inadequate access to health care. And now, in the recent reported assaults on Asian Americans in our country. If we look into the mirror of our society, we see that the mirror is broken. I found a few Asian proverbs that may offer some wisdom for this moment. From the Chinese first, a crisis is an opportunity riding the dangerous wind. Perhaps this crisis of racism we are facing may also be an opportunity. Asian Americans are saying that they need to speak out and no longer be the silent minority. And white Americans need to confront our history of racism and speak out against injustice, even if it is for us riding a dangerous wind. The Chinese also say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. How true. Just a single step. What could you do? What would that step be for you? Maybe to write a letter to the editor, or to participate in a prayer vigil. Even online, there are such vigils to participate in. The Chinese also say, a bird does not sing because it has an answer, it sings because it has a song. If we educate ourselves about the Asian experience of living in America, even if we do not have the answer to the current problem, perhaps we will know that there is a song to sing. Another Chinese proverb says, behave toward everyone as if receiving a guest. Imagine that if we were to treat everyone we see, everyone we come in contact with as guests. Guests whom we treat with hospitality and kindness, people we go out of our way for. Those are guests. Imagine being that open to new people. And finally, the Chinese say, if you want to find out about the road ahead, then ask about it from those coming back. We must ask people of color about their life experiences. We cannot continue to be ignorant. It is not an excuse for silence. We must talk to people who've been there and listen. The Japanese also have proverbs that may fit this moment. One is this: with many little strokes, a large tree is felled. Any major shift or movement takes many people and much effort. Change is difficult. The enormity of the situation, however, should not stop us from doing something. Perhaps one thing we all can do is to examine our language. Are we using unkind or old-fashioned words, terminology, for groups of people. I think we should call people what they most want to be called. The tongue is but 3 inches long, but it can kill a man 6 feet high, say the Japanese. The final proverb I want to share today from the Japanese culture is the topic of my message today. A broken mirror cannot be made to shine. We have work to do. Are we called to this work? Perhaps that's the first question. Moses was going about his daily work, just every day as usual, when God called him to stop injustice. Listen as I read Exodus 3, verses 1 to 12. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called him out of the bush. Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings. And I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppress them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? God said, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on the mountain. Familiar passage. I don't know about you, but every time I read something that's familiar, I see something else in it that I hadn't seen before. Moses had known about the unfair treatment of Jewish slaves in Egypt. He knew about that, but he hadn't done anything. He hadn't confronted the injustice, rather like most of us. We've known about racism in our country, perhaps not personally or not acutely. Perhaps we haven't wanted to know about it personally or acutely. But now we have held up a mirror this past year, and we see a broken social order. We cannot deny it. A broken mirror cannot be made to shine. We need to repair the mirror, and we need to repair the society reflected in that mirror. The Jews have a concept in Hebrew, tikkun olam. It means the repair of the world. It is the prospect of overcoming all forms of idolatry and to hold before ourselves an aspiration to behave and act constructively and beneficially. Martin Luther King Jr. called it the beloved community. It's the same idea. Only if we repair our society will it shine. Perhaps there's something you can do. Perhaps there's something little or big that you can do with others to help repair the world. That's what we need to do. And then it will be well for all. And when it is well for all, then it will be well for you. May it be so.